What if Pink Floyd's final true song wasn't just music, but a farewell letter? When David Gilmour wrote High Hopes, the closing track of Pink Floyd's last studio album, The Division Bell, in 1994, he wasn't simply crafting another song. He was looking back on a lifetime. Childhood dreams, friendships lost, and the slow, inevitable breaking apart of one of the greatest bands in history. And hidden between the notes and words, many fans believe he left us a secret goodbye. Not just to Pink Floyd, but to the very idea of who they once were. This isn't just another track. It's the sound of an ending, wrapped in nostalgia, regret, and hope. And today, we'll uncover why David Gilmour's last song was a secret farewell, one we might not have realized until decades later. The song begins with a tolling church bell. It's not random, it's deliberate. Church bells mark beginnings, but more often they mark endings. Weddings, funerals, farewells. Gilmour chose that sound to open Pink Floyd's last lyrical statement. Then the first lines arrive, sung with a haunting calm, beyond the horizon of the place we lived when we were young, in a world of magnets and miracles. This isn't just poetry, it's autobiography. Gilmour grew up in Cambridge, alongside Syd Barrett, long before Pink Floyd ever filled stadiums. To them, childhood was magical. Magnets and miracles, endless days of imagination. But the key word here is beyond. He's already saying he's left that place. He's looking at it from a distance, unable to return. The line feels like someone staring into the past, realizing it can't be reclaimed. And the song's music mirrors that emotion. The melody is both hopeful and mournful, a bittersweet blend that immediately tells us this isn't a celebration. It's reflection. The next verse pulls us deeper. Our thoughts strayed constantly and without boundary. The ringing of the division bell had begun. This is where nostalgia collides with reality. Pink Floyd in the late 60s and early 70s were limitless. Every album broke boundaries. Every experiment led somewhere new. Their thoughts truly strayed without boundary. But then came the division bell on the surface. It's just the album's title. But in truth, it's a metaphor for fracture, for the split with Roger Waters, for the creative battles, for the sense that the unity that once defined them had been shattered. By 1994, the band was reduced to Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright. Waters was gone. Barrett was long lost. Even though the name Pink Floyd still carried massive weight, Gilmour knew inside that something essential was gone forever. The bell had already rung, and it was a bell you couldn't unhear. Then come the lines that fans quote again and again, words that hit with devastating simplicity. The grass was greener, the light was brighter, with friends surrounded, the nights of wonder. It's impossible to hear this and not think of the band's early days. Nights of wonder, when Syd Barrett led them into psychedelia. Days when they were young, broke, full of dreams. The music world was wide open, but by the 90s, those days were long gone. Syd Barrett had disappeared into mental illness. Richard Wright had been pushed out of the band during the Wall years and only slowly returned. Roger Waters, once the driving force, was now an enemy, locked in bitter lawsuits. The grass wasn't greener anymore. The light wasn't brighter. The friends who once surrounded Gilmour were gone. And those nights of wonder, when Pink Floyd's shows felt like stepping into another universe, had faded into history. This verse isn't just nostalgia, it's grief. It's Gilmour admitting that what they once had can never return. The lyrics then dig into something even more personal. Encumbered forever by desire and ambition, there's a hunger still unsatisfied. Pink Floyd had everything. They became one of the biggest bands in the world. Dark Side of the Moon alone sold more than 45 million copies. Their concerts were legendary, their stage designs groundbreaking. And yet, here's David Gilmour at the end of the journey, saying it wasn't enough. That desire and ambition chained them. That no matter how high they climbed, The hunger never went away. This is heartbreaking. It's the admission that success doesn't bring peace, that the very ambition that made Pink Floyd great also destroyed their friendships and left them isolated. And in saying this, Gilmour isn't just confessing, he's letting go. It feels like a man finally realizing he doesn't have to chase anymore. The song's final moments bring everything into sharp focus. The endless river, forever and ever. These lines weren't just poetic filler, they were foreshadowing. 2 decades later, Pink Floyd released The Endless River in 2014 after Richard Wright's death. But here's the truth. The Endless River wasn't a new creative statement. It was built mostly from Wright's leftover recordings, turned into an instrumental tribute. Yes, technically it was the final Pink Floyd album. But in spirit? High Hopes was the real ending. The last time Pink Floyd spoke to us in words. The last time their story was told in lyrics. That's why fans consider it the true farewell. The song where Gilmour said goodbye. And to make it even more powerful, the music video was crafted by their longtime visual collaborator, Storm Thorgerson. Surreal images of bridges, clocks, floating objects, and lost landscapes captured the feeling of dreams slipping away. Thorgerson had worked with Pink Floyd since the beginning, and his vision for High Hopes felt like a visual eulogy. It's no coincidence that today, High Hopes is the most viewed official Pink Floyd video on YouTube. Millions still return to it, decades later, because it feels like stepping into the band's last dream. And then, as the bells toll one final time and the sound fades into silence, it doesn't feel like just the end of a song. It feels like the closing of a life chapter. A curtain slowly falling. Why does High Hopes cut so deeply, even for listeners who weren't alive when Pink Floyd were at their peak? Because it's universal. We all know what it's like to look back and realize the best days are behind us. We all know what it's like to lose friends, to see time slip away, to wonder if the hunger inside will ever truly be satisfied. For Gilmour, those feelings weren't abstract. They were painfully real. He had lived through the rise and fall of Pink Floyd. He had watched Syd Barrett vanish before his eyes. He had seen Richard Wright nearly erased from the band's history, only to bring him back. He had fought bitter wars with Roger Waters. And yet, through it all, he carried on. But by 1994, he knew the journey was ending. That's why High Hopes doesn't sound like triumph. It sounds like peace. Not happiness, not victory, peace. Acceptance that the past is gone and the future is uncertain. It's no wonder fans describe the song as the soundtrack to their own goodbyes, whether to youth, to relationships, or even to loved ones. It's a universal farewell. Looking back now, High Hopes wasn't just another Pink Floyd track. It was David Gilmour's secret goodbye, an elegy for youth, for Syd Barrett, for Richard Wright, for Roger Waters, and for the band itself. Yes, The Endless River came after, but that was more of an epilogue, a tribute. High Hopes was the final chapter, the true ending in words and music, and maybe that's why it remains Pink Floyd's most powerful late-era song. Because it's not just about the band, it's about all of us, about looking back, feeling the weight of time, and finally saying goodbye. So when you hear those final bells fade away, remember, you're not just hearing the end of the division bell, you're hearing the end of an era. And perhaps the most honest farewell David Gilmour ever gave us.